And let me bring up something too. I got this theory about this wave of censorship. The corporate press, at least what I saw, quickly framed the assassination as an act of political violence, and then there was this fear mongering about this surge in political violence. But we've seen, reporters such as The Intercept had a report recently that there's not really actually much evidence of a rise in political violence. I mean, of course, political violence exists, and I documented it, and you've documented it. But as new details emerge, and we'll see what the trial confirms, the killing seems to look less of like an ideological political violence, say like it's less like the murder of like William McKinley, where it was ideologically driven, and more like culture war, it seems like, where it's about LGBTQ rights. And I bring this up because the corporate media keeps hammering the political violence, and that's where we're looking, and that's what it seems like Trump and some folks in his administration are using to clamp down on the left. But I wonder what you kind of make about it. Do we even have a narrative? Do we have the right narrative? And what role is corporate media playing in kind of aiding censorship here?
Well, the very demand for an imposed narrative in and of itself acts as censorship by crowding out any other competing perspectives based on emerging evidence.
Hmm.
Oh, there's a phrase. Whenever things like this happen, Nolan, these spectacle events or these in this case, let's just call it what it is. It's a horrible, tragic event. When these things happen, the media come to cover it, right? And of course, we think through the lens. Where is the lens aimed? Who's behind the lens and the camera? What questions are they armed or loaded with? Sorry for all the jingoistic metaphors here. But we do have a lot of shooting the messengers in this country to keep talking a little bit more about political violence, as it were. Political violence comes in many, many strains, and whether or not this counts as that is up for people to debate. I think, however, that people are going to at least interpret that because of who the victim was, that must have had something to do with it. So that kind of frame puts it really I think favors the wanton speculation that fuels that very kind of narrative of the very political violence that they're asking about. I think something else that is important is that we see there's a lot of attention and a lot of, like, I don't know, like TV crime detective show people on social media platforms that are going to like find the clue that no one did and solve it all,
Hey,
and
let me
go
let me
down
let
eating.
me talk about that real quick because that's a
Yeah,
really
go ahead, go
all right.
ahead.
Let me bring up some of these. So, because I've been following social media and looking at some of these, so for
Yeah,
folks
I know you
who
have.
maybe for folks who haven't gone down the rabbit hole, uh,
Yeah.
there are admittingly some strange details fueling speculation. For instance, we see the video of the shooter coming to campus, and he's got the gun in his pants, and the police say that he had the gun together, took it apart, put it in his backpack, jumped to the roof, put it together, shot, took it back apart, put it in his backpack, put it back together, and hid it in the woods, or that he changed his outfit 4 times. This is causing a lot of speculation online. My personal opinion is that there's probably just misreporting, and eventually throughout the court case, we'll get more clarity on what happened there. But there's that. One of the things that is drawing a lot of attention is that there were two people on site at the shooting who distracted police. One was a guy who had a pellet gun. Another is a pretty famous figure named George Zinn, who
Right.
reportedly was near 9/11 or near Manhattan or in Manhattan on 9/11. That's uncorroborated. It is corroborated that he was arrested for a bomb threat at the Utah, I think Salt Lake City Marathon, about a year after the Boston Marathon. But when Charlie Kirk was shot, he started screaming, I did it, shoot me, shoot me." He's this 71-year-old who drew a lot of attention over that. So there are these kind of narratives online, and then there's also one about chat logs about how Steve Bannon on the left and Kyle Kalinske on the or sorry Steve Bannon on the right, Kyle Kalinske on the left
Yeah,
think
it's like,
it's
have we
yeah,
shifted that far? Yeah, go
exactly.
ahead.
Um, they think that the chat logs police have given are like too convenient, and they're speculating that they may be fake or something like that. So that's the kind of stuff that's online that you're talking about, right? So go ahead.
Yeah, speculating versus emerging evidence, right? And we're really impatient. But when we go to these events, we already have these pre-existing frames, we have a ready set narrative, and then we look to fit everything into that. Journalism is supposed to go and then open the frame and open the lens and find the information and try to begin to understand the story and help the public make sense of complicated affairs, not continue racing to like have the hot take narrative that's going to be team red versus team blue. As I was going to say, there's a lot of speculation. There's that word again and again and again. What's the intent? What's the intent? Well, and on one level, the intent doesn't, it's moot. It happened, it's done. And the aftermath of what's happening is being weaponized against the left, even if there's no evidence that this is an ideological crime. It's how it's used. We could argue about all the inconsistencies of 9/11 and all the other business. What we don't need to argue about is what was clear. It was used as a pretext to do things that would have not been possible prior, right? We would not have been able to go and invade 7 countries, strip the Constitution, round up 1,000 Arab American Muslims, and so on if it wasn't done in an utter climate of fear that succumb to totalitarian ways that become codified through policy in the Department of Homeland Security and the USA Patriot Act. That's why we were talking about these things 20 some years ago, right, Nolan?
Hmm.
In fact, I'm pretty sure that you waltzed into a class of mine sometime after
Right
9/11
around that time, yeah.
where we were talking about the road to the war in Iraq, the lack of WMDs, media propaganda. Well, here we are. We're at another spectacle event, and we already see political factions racing. And Kimmel was part of this. Kimmel was saying, well, it looks like he's a groiper. Maybe he's further than MAGA. It's an infighting thing. I mean, that's just speculation. And it's part of human nature, I suppose, gossip and speculation, but it's not journalism. And I would also say that Kimmel's not a journalist. So, we should be careful about what standards we're applying. I don't mean that in a double standard way, but Kimmel's a late night jokester. So the idea that you're going after comedians because they don't have, proper reverence for the dead, is crassly authoritarian. But it's certainly been part of Trump's MO. It's something he wants to do to score points to own the libs. Um, Unfortunately, that has rippling effects because Disney also owns uh, other news
Oh,
media networks and other outlets that do other things. And so that's why this is problematic. It doesn't take a genius at ABC News to see what's happening to an entertainer and say, oh, chilling effect. I guess I better watch what I report or what questions I ask, right? This is the problem with corporate, for profit commercial media in general. And by the way, they make more money the more they wantonly, recklessly speculate because it keeps viewers on the show. They make more money when they say dumb, unaccountable things. Anyway, the whole premediation concept is that we're always keeping the public on the hook for something that we might know in the future that we don't yet know. And it's that very process that keeps people watching, keeps eyeballs on air for advertiser money. That's part of the problem. That's why we need to take a look at corporate consolidation and corporate ownership of media. And in this case, we have, like we did in the Skydance Paramount issue with David Ellison, with Larry Ellison's kid, we have another possible kind of merger and thing going on where it was Sinclair that decided they weren't going to show this Kimmel program after Brendan Carr spoke out. Just like we saw it was the cable companies and the satellite companies that dumped RT America. It wasn't the government, it's censorship by proxy. These companies have material before the government because they want to merge, they want to become bigger companies. This is happening again. We're seeing the same kind of thing happening again with TikTok, right? And the ownership of TikTok with Oracle again, right? It's corporate media ownership. It's capitalism. It's the for-profit commercial model that has nothing to do with ethical journalism and the public interest. And we need to definitely separate those, and we need to focus on who is trying to do factual public interest journalism around these issues. Where are they focusing? What stories are they telling? And asking questions, even like the person at MSNBC that got sacked, right? None of the things that that person said or rose as questions were outside the bounds of journalistic ethics. Maybe the timing was considered poor, but more what we're seeing is that it just doesn't line up with the ideological sycophancy of corporate America and corporate media aligning itself with the Trump administration.
yeah, it's a good point.